All right, so this talk is a little less serious and a little more lighthearted, or at least the initial part of it is. I'm gonna show some photos, I guess, real quick right here. So this is a tree, right? And then we have this tree, and this one, and then I don't know. Here's a couple more trees. And I think that the thing that I think is interesting is with this last tree that I put up here. As you can see, this is just a cartoon tree, not an actual tree. But if you notice something, generally, when we draw a tree, or when you think of a tree, and like someone says, draw a tree, the color that we choose to draw a tree with is brown. And I think this is interesting because, you just looked at all those photos and how many of these trees were actually brown, like, I just think it's kind of funny because there's a lot of trees and like, they're not really brown, or at least not around me. They're usually more of like a gray or maybe a black, like a blackish, like the pine trees. I wouldn't really consider them brown. They're more of like a grayish kind of something. They're probably the closest to brown though of all the trees in my area. I've got like a lot of oak trees by me, so I've got like chestnut oaks, red oaks, white oaks. All these trees, they're not brown. Like, they're not brown, and I think that's kind of interesting and kind of funny that we associate brown with trees, but most trees are not brown. Or at least not by me. I think that's kind of just an interesting thing to kind of think about, because I believe the reason why that is because it just looked better in animations, and we grew up watching these animations, and so in the animations the trees are brown, and so we've just kind of associated brown with trees. That's my working theory right now. I'm not 100% certain on this, but I think that's kind of interesting that like we associate something with something it's not even real. It's not really realistic. Trees they aren't really brown for the most part. And yet, if I'm doing a colored image, I grab a brown, like crayon or whatever the heck I'm using, and I use that to draw a tree. I don't think that makes, I don't know, thinking about it, it doesn't really make sense, but that's just kind of what everyone associates with a tree. And the step that I kind of want to take that into further is, beyond that is, maybe what else are we associating with being the real thing when the real thing is not actually that at all? Because it took me a long time to kind of come to that realization, like, wait a minute, like, trees aren't even brown, like, why do we do that? And I think that is kind of interesting because, what if there's something else that we've just associated as that's how it is, and that's not really how it's supposed to be at all, like, what if the way, like, because of how we've seen love portrayed in shows and in TV shows and movies and stuff, we just think that's what love is. That's what love's supposed to be like. But it's really not like that at all, and we're trying to chase after something that just doesn't exist. And I think there's, I think this is called like hyper reality or something like that, or like, where like we watch like a hyper reality and like the actual reality is just nothing like what we think that it's like because of what we've seen so much of. And it's kind of an interesting interesting topic, and it's an interesting kind of to look into because it's very true. There's a lot of stuff that we watch nowadays, and we just it's just scaled up to like action and like fighting and all this stuff. It's just scaled up to 11, and it's like this isn't reality at all. You know, this isn't how things would really play out. But how do we know? We haven't experienced these things for real, or at least, like, I don't think that we have. I don't know. Like, but I think this kind of, like, things like this, I think Love is probably the best example that I can think of on the spot, where this is how it's portrayed, and this is what it's expected. So this is what has become like our reality, where now kids are dating in elementary school and they're saying "I love you," and it's like, I don't think you really like. I don't mean to be a downer here or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that a kid in elementary school doesn't really love the person they're dating, because they've barely lived. I feel like it's very unlikely that they truly love this person, but they just are saying "I love you," and they're just doing what everyone else was doing in the movies and the shows, and everyone else is doing around them. Everyone else says "I love you." I must, like, we're together, we must be in love. And I just don't feel like that's right. I don't feel like that's how that should be. And I feel like it's just left me personally very confused, because I look at these movies and these TV shows and they bump into each other out of nowhere, and then in 2 weeks they're in love and they get married, and it's like they just click right off the bat and everything's perfect, everything's great. And now here I am sitting waiting for this to come my way. When am I gonna bump into my love? When am I gonna look at her from across the room and be like, that's the one? Or, you know, when is my love story gonna start? And I feel like it's an expectation that's been put in our minds, and it's like, this is what love is. And it's not what love is at all. And now I'm left in kind of a confusion where it's like, well, what is love? How will I know when I find it? You know? And you can say, oh, you can look at examples. You can see what love is by looking at your parents or your grandparents or other families, you know, and say like, oh, well, they must have love. But I don't feel like you really can't. I don't feel like you really can, because one, you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what's in their heads. You don't know what they truly feel for each other. You can't feel that just by watching them. You may be able to tell, okay, yeah, they care about each other, but you can't really know what that feels like because you're not them. So you don't know if you have what they have just by looking at them. You'd have to be them to know. And obviously that is not really something we're capable of. Or at least not at the moment. So I feel like it's just, there's no way to know if you have it. So you just gotta trust, I guess, that you do. And I feel like I haven't found that yet, but I see people that are like, oh, I love you after work, like they've been dating for like a month, and they're saying I love you, and it's like, maybe you do, but I don't know. I feel like love is a lot stronger than we've been led to believe it is. I feel like it's not the type of thing that you just develop in a week, develop in 2 weeks, you know, regardless of the situation. Like, I've been on like school trips where it's just like us, like in my past I went on school trips and there was people that I went with, and it was like, wow, like this person is like, this is great, like this person's like really cool. But then, you know, you come back from the trip and then you're back to reality, and then it's like you go your separate ways. But like in that like 1 week time, you know, you're spending a lot more time together. You got to know each other, and you're like, wow, okay, maybe I do really like this person. And so I think there's the potential to kind of get familiar with a person really quickly. But I also don't like, I don't feel like that's love, because it's so easy to come by. My problem is I feel like if I took the time to get to know most people, I would like them. I would find them very cool. I would think it'd be nice to hang out with them. I don't think that's love, though. I don't think that that's what really love is. And I'm still on the hunt, and I'll get back to you if I ever find it, I guess. But, you know, there's certain things that we've kind of associated to be one way, when reality is definitely something else. And it's a lot easier to see with trees, tying it back to what I initially started with. It's a lot easier to see the difference with trees, you know. Reality, gray. In fiction, or in our make-believe world, it's brown. You know, it's easy to see the difference if you just go out and look. It's not something you really pay attention to because it doesn't really affect your day-to-day. But it's easy to see. And I feel like love is one of those things that it's easy to kind of see that one of these things is not right. It doesn't really quite match what reality is, but it's not easy to kind of point out what exactly is the true state that it should be. You know, where you could say, well, trees are actually gray. It's a lot harder to say, well, this is actually what love is, you know. I think it's potentially relative to everyone. You know, like one person's, what love is to them is different to another, and you know, that could be fine. That could be how it is, but that's not really how it's portrayed. So I think that is just something interesting, and I'm sure there are a lot of other factors of life where this kind of plays out, you know, where there's like one way that we kind of associate it to be, but it's really just not that, you know, like, I don't know. I just think that's kind of interesting and a little concerning, you know, because how far could this go? I don't know. Anyway, peace out.